Thank you for watching the Housing Oregon YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. Slide decks from the presenters are going to be available below. Thanks for watching.
It's 9 o'clock. Go ahead. Cool. Okay, welcome everybody. Hopefully you're in the right spot today. We have a lovely panel here. We're going to be talking about service partnerships and supportive housing. So I'll give you all a second to think about your lives and see if that was what you were thinking. It's what I was thinking. I think these guys are going to be awesome. So my name is Ray Trotta. I use they, them pronouns. I'm based here in Portland, Oregon. I work at CSH, Corporation for Supportive Housing. We do all things supportive housing, policy, lending, training, technical assistance. One of the joys of my job is that I get to know partners in the community who are implementing quality supportive housing. I also I host the Oregon Supportive Housing Institute with our lovely partners, OHCS, who fund that. We're the training partners. And we see projects through from planning to implementation. And some of the folks on the stage, their projects have gone through the Institute. So it's really exciting. We're 5 years into the Institute, and we have PSH projects throughout the state open their doors. So today we're going to be talking about 3 topics. So if you're unfamiliar, can everyone hear me okay? Okay, if you're unfamiliar with supportive housing, very simply, housing plus services for those in our community who need it most. That means those who are system impacted, right? Often frequently engaged with different systems, right? Child welfare, criminal justice, overutilization of the healthcare system, or the healthcare system isn't adequately serving that individual, houselessness, housing instability. So that's sort of the sweet spot. We see overrepresentation, of course, in our houselessness population of Black, Brown, people of color, trans, non-binary, other individuals who face great marginalizations. And again, that's where we target our supportive housing towards those who need it most. It's an intensive, as you will witness and understand from these lovely panelists, it's an intensive intervention, and it works, right? We get people housed, we keep them housed, and they will tell you how. So without further ado, I'll let each of our panelists introduce themselves. And just a reminder to you all know the work really well. So if it feels nerve-wracking to talk about it, I get it. But also just remember, oh yeah, I do my job every day. I do it really well. I'm serving my community. I'm here for a reason. So thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And these guys are going to learn a lot, I hope. And yeah, I'll let you introduce yourselves, and then we'll move along to our combo.
Hi, I'm Melissa Stark. I'm the lead services coordinator at Heartwood Commons. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm happy to be here.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Martin Oliveira. I'm the clinical case manager at Heartwood Commons. I'm also with Sequoia Mental Health Services. I use he, they pronouns, and I'm also excited to be here.
Hi, I'm Catherine Moore. I'm the Director of Programs with Community Partners for Affordable Housing. I use she, her pronouns. So coming into PSH work, I started always being really interested in housing justice, and was able to work and intern at Sisters of the Road during my MSW program, and really helped me understand the importance of building relationship in this work. And that is such a key component of PSH. And so found my way kind of to SEPA through doing permanent supportive housing work with actually one of our partners here, Cascadia, on a mobile mental health team for about 12 years. And now it's cool to come back into the work and be supporting kind of the PSH work that's happening in those collaborations and coordination.
Hello, good morning. My name is Robert Nicholas, he, him pronouns. I'm a clinical director at Cascadia Health. I've been with Cascadia for about 10 years, but for the last 2 years, I've been overseeing our supportive housing programs, which includes the Joyce, which is a program that we're partnering on with some of the awesome folks up here with me. Supportive housing is really important. I'm really passionate about supportive housing. I think it's one of the biggest and most important things in terms of addressing some of the serious issues in our community, like homelessness. So I'm happy to be here and to be talking with you other folks up here today.
Good. Can you hear me? My name is Patrick Shendo, he, him pronouns, and I'm the housing specialist for NARA at the Joyce. And my main job is to, I really love to help people, that, I suggest them to meet me halfway, and we'll walk together, Sometimes I'll carry them, sometimes they'll carry me, That's my whole philosophy is be patient, caring, and that just bring that light to that tunnel. There's that light, and I'm just here to, I think we're all here to guide them, to get there. So I'm from Taos, New Mexico, reservation, and I've been here 3 years. I started with the Joyce when it started to open in July, and it's been a year. It's been a cool ride. I'm a musician as well. I do a lot of meditations and therapy for the clients that I have, the whole Joyce, So I wanted to share my music with you guys. If you don't mind standing, I'm gonna do a meditation for you guys. Just put out intentions, what you guys want from this conference. Open your eyes, ears, mind, heart, that you get what this is intended for. So thank you for being here. You can close your eyes, you can jump around, whatever. Take a deep breath. Manifest. Intentions. Manifest. Take a deep breath. Breathe out. Put your hands together. Bring that own energy from you. Hands to your heart. Give yourself a hug. Stand yourself up. Deep breath. Swipe away any negative. Okay. Maybe you got up on the wrong side of the bed. Time to clear it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Patrick. That was it. Catherine and Melissa, did you guys want to say anything with your intros about where you came from? Anything? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm from SEPA, which I forgot to include also, and I've been with SEPA almost 3 years. In December, I started as a resident service coordinator, and I've been at Heartwood Commons almost a year now in October. And before that, I worked with kids. I never knew much about the housing industry. Things work out for a reason. I ended up being a resident service coordinator, and I just really love housing and a passion for it, and truly believe that housing first is like so essential to sobriety to any other stability a person can have. And that's why I'm really passionate about this work.
I also have been at Heartwood Commons for about more than a year and a half now. I've mostly been in mental health for about maybe 3 years or so. I was introduced to providing houseless services when I was working in California. It was originally supposed to be a help center for the homeless, but it started to turn into a mental health field, and then it was just kind of a general passion that I wanted to do afterwards. I wanted to work with this population because I understand that there's additional factors that come into play when someone is chronically homeless. And I do believe that being able to implement even just the smallest amount of services can really make a change. And being at Heartwood Commons, I kind of figured out what housing first meant. And I am now kind of experiencing what that transition looks like. And I think it's beneficial to be able to experience it as we can share with other programs that kind of want to be able to start. If so, I am really willing to answer all of your guys' questions about that. Yeah.
Sweet. Thanks so much, guys. So we have 3 topics we're going to discuss. We're going to talk about the first year, coordination and communication, and tenant-led engagement. So if you're unfamiliar with the supportive housing field, one of the beauties, I mean, you can see the beauty here. You can only imagine what goes on in their buildings that they'll talk about. But one of the beauties, I think, is that we really force each other to work together, maybe more so than other fields or other housing interventions. So affordable housing, right? You might be able to do your own thing, stay in your silos. Supportive housing, not going to work, right? If we stay in our silos, if we don't work together, it is not going to work. Our tenants won't get what they need. We will be at each other's throats. It won't be working out. So we're going to talk about that today. First year, these guys are all just completed their first year of housing, which is lovely and intense. We recognize, right, we're moving folks from chronic homelessness to walls, windows, neighbors, like so much stuff that was different from their life before. The potential of safety, but you know, it takes a while for the body to like ever feel that. So the first year, we call it all hands on deck. I call it all hands on deck, right? It's like it's traumatizing for your tenants sometimes. It can be traumatizing for your staff. It's really an intensive time for staffing, for capacity, for learning, that living building that you're working in. So we're going to talk about that. So the first year, guys, thinking back on this first year, from planning to opening your doors, what did you learn? And as I said, right, we talk about this as sort of like a big milestone. So yeah, just curious about your learnings. And again, thank you all for sharing so much about like what you bring to this work. It's really cool.
Well, I wasn't here from the very beginning at Heartwood Commons. I think they'd been operating about 6 months before I came on, and I'd only heard lots of interesting stories about all the things, you know, with between the partners and the county and everyone. So I knew a little bit coming into it, but not much. And I think that's why they developed my role, which is a lead services coordinator, to kind of bring all the different assets and like factors together and have like one person to like be the communication between all the different parts. So I came on about 6 months after the program had started. There were definitely a lot of hiccups, and there still are, but I have seen over the last year just so much work being done, so many residents just really finally feeling at home, and just seeing how they've adapted to life all together in a PSH property has been a really amazing piece of it. And every day is an adventure. Like every day is different. We never know what to expect. And it really is like all hands on deck is our quote we say all the time, because we're all doing all the things every day, just depending on the day. So it's really nice to have that collaboration and that. And our building was only about 50% leased up about 10 months in. So in March, we did a huge push and got the rest of the building full. So that has been another adjustment just with all the new people coming in. But now every unit is full, and that is like very satisfying to know all those people are now housed.
Something that I think is important that can be applied to other housing programs when kind of being a part of a startup, if that's okay to use the word, is that when you're aware that you're a part of a building program, there's kind of like this exciting energy that I do think that you need to utilize and take full advantage of. There's this moment where I know that when I applied for the position, something that I was really thinking about was I wanted to be a part of something that was starting from the ground up and really being able to create the structure. And I think once you kind of start off on that correct footing, it can really create the momentum of that program. So I do want to say is if you're a part of that, that's something that you really want to utilize and you want to really kind of build in that optimism for the program itself and kind of really create an expectation of what you're going to be doing within that program and how you're going to want to be implementing it because I understand, or we had kind of like a free reign of how we wanted to start this program. We were told that this program was ours and that we can figure out what works for us. And sometimes that's beneficial and other times it's just kind of like we're running with our heads cut off like chickens. But at the same time, you know, that really is one of the key factors is understanding what works well for the team and what works well for you. I think what you guys also want to start off is having the realistic expectations of what services that you can provide. At Heartwood Commons, one of our issue was I think we might have overshot the type of services that we can provide and based off of meeting clients who are kind of polarizing that barrier of what we can or that boundary of what we can provide really kind of sets you up for more unsuccessful moments than successful. But at the same time, you know, that's just kind of being a little bit hyper focused on the ones that aren't working out and the ones that you really want to help out, but also understanding that there is a boundary, that there is a cap of what type of services that you can provide that is not only supposed to be successful for the client, but also successful for the retention of the service providers, making sure that we're staying within a certain boundary of what we can provide. Something that I learned in being in Heartwood Commons is kind of being really adaptable. So kind of having to be okay with being exposed to a lot of gaps within our program, but not seeing them as, you know, us not doing a good job, but how we can kind of really fill in that blank, kind of almost like that blank canvas effect and using those as learning experiences to make sure of if this happens, we don't want it to happen again, and how can we implement this within our policies and how can we implement this within our structure of the program itself. I think what was beneficial for us too was kind of having an understanding of what that flow is going to be for Heartwood Commons. You have an idea of what the enrollment intake process is going to be like, but once you actually start putting it to use, it's a little bit different. A lot of hiccups can occur. So it's being able to kind of write out what that process looks like, I think is really beneficial within our program. And talking to both the providers and seeing what's comfortable for us within it. And something that I'd want to say is what kind of really held us the most within the startup is maintaining our engagements with our clients because the program is there for the clients. And even though we're kind of struggling and trying to figure out how we're going to be implementing these services, the residents really don't know that, but the residents do know that we're not engaging with them and the residents know that they're not getting services. So I think that's kind of like our priority as well.
Thank you. So transition to talking a little bit about the Joyce where I'm involved, as it says on the screen, it's a 66 unit SRO unit supportive housing project in downtown. And it's an awesome project, but it also presents some pretty unique challenges, at least from my perspective, you know, working for Cascadia Health, which is a really large mental health provider, but also provider of housing, primary care, substance use treatment. We stretch across a lot of different service areas. And in my experience working for Cascadia and our supportive housing sites, it's typically ones that we own and operate. So we're serving as both the service provider and the property manager. And there's a clear delineation in permanent supportive housing between service providers and property management. But there's also a lot of overlap and a lot of coordination and collaboration that's necessary as part of that. And in my experience, before coming to the Joyce, that was a little bit easier because the property manager was also Cascadia. And so while there was a distinction between what we were all doing, we were part of the same agency. And so coming to a program like the Joyce, where there's SEPA as the owner, NARA and another provider, so 3 providers and a separate property manager, that's like 5 entities that are all involved in this one project, supporting all 66 people. And so that was a bit of a unique and different sort of challenge for me, and one that I learned a lot. And I didn't really go into it expecting that. I was kind of thinking, I've been in supportive housing for the entirety of the 10 years I've been with Cascadia. Have gone through the Supportive Housing Institute that CSH and OHCS put on, learned a lot through that, but I learned a whole heck of a lot at the Joyce as well, particularly the need for continued patience and grace. Certainly for the residents that are coming in, all of the residents of the Joyce are coming through coordinated entry systems, and so exiting chronic homelessness, and that presents itself, very unique challenges. And so that patience and grace certainly for the residents, but also for the other providers that are involved, and for ourselves too, as we're kind of learning this new project and learning this new building that was, well, not necessarily a new building, a completely renovated, very old building, which had some issues as well, but that we happily and in a very positive manner, I think, navigated through that opening process. I was fortunate enough to be a part of some of those really kind of integrally important aspects of the development, not as much as certainly others from SEPA and the CAP and NARA, but development of the tenant selection plan, going through and having a solid memorandum of understanding, MOU, that kind of dictated what we were all doing, and also how we were working with our coordinated entry partners through the lease up process. I think that low barrier housing first, harm reduction focused, permanent supportive housing is one of the biggest and most impactful things in our community. Is really, like I said when I was introducing myself, going to help to address our homelessness issues. A lot of the things, though, when we're talking about projects that have, LIHTC and other housing subsidies and things, don't really feel low barrier for the individuals that are coming in, and also for the providers that are helping them to come in. And so while it is low barrier, and we put a lot of energy and effort into ensuring like the tenant selection plan had and background check criteria had very few things that would disqualify people from entering there, requiring IDs and social security cards and paperwork that needs to be filled out in a very specific way for people that are living on the streets or living in shelter settings or other really unstable housing situations can be a big challenge. And so we're having to not only rely on ourselves as the incoming service provider, but also the service providers that they may or may not be, individuals may, or households may or may not be connected with when they're coming in. There's also, of course, like delays with housing and construction, things that happen that push back timelines, and delays with entities like Home Forward for inspections, which, Home Forward is a fantastic partner at this project, of course. Not saying anything negative about them, but there are challenges with doing the paperwork and the back and forth that goes on between the service provider, between housing, and between the other housing entities that are involved in projects like this. And so there was a big learning curve for me, and I think for all of us, as we were kind of navigating that at a unique project like the Joyce, that, like I said, was a renovation of a really old building as opposed to a new construction. I think the other piece about especially with folks coming through coordinated entry is that, and also for any PSH setting, is that rapport and trust that you develop out on the service provider side of things is vitally important. And that can take a very long time to get through. There's still folks at the Joyce that I feel like we're still in that rapport and trust building process even over a year after people have been moving in. It takes a lot of time to transition from living on the street and being in that kind of survival mode to being in housing and having people that actually do care about you and want you to succeed and want to support you and working toward your short and long-term goals.
Well, I do work for NARA. You guys have probably heard of it. My role is a little bit different. Like I'm like hands-on, like in the office, 40 hours a week. And just to see it from the beginning, from the first person coming in, and looking around and see how beautiful the room is. And, it's kind of, I didn't know what to expect when, and now I really know that the challenges they had, a lot of them were, they had beds, but they were still sleeping on the ground. A lot of them needed more clothing than usual, They didn't know how to use stoves. They don't know how to use, the thermostat, So my hands-on, was to be with them, to guide them and to have patience with them, and meet them where they're at, you know. Just going in, the first year was, you're still trying to get to know the person, and where they're coming from. And a lot of my clients are Native Americans, and I just bring my own living experience from where I grew up on the reservation, and how there's alcohol, drugs, and all that comes with it. So to build that trust, when they first come in, it was a huge thing. I was able to add some culture into their programs. A lot of them have lost their kind of their culture and voice, and they miss home. They miss where they come from, and I think when that's taken away from you, it's harder to find it on your path, especially when there's drugs and alcohol involved and all that comes with it, and homelessness. Just so I just saw myself in their situation. I switched roles. What would I be, if I was in that position, and put a lot of gratitude, and I just wanted to make them feel comfortable, wanted to make them feel loved and cherished, and you know, and the SEPA and the other case managers that we work together, and the program coordinator, um, we just banded together and kind of watched what they needed, what they liked, and what is it going to take for all of us to help this one person. I have 20 clients, but really you have 66 clients, because sometimes a caseworker might get along with this person, and they're more trusted with this, like I don't mind that, because I'm there to help everybody that's in there, and I'm there to learn from the case managers, and we collaborate a lot, during the week, and talk about clients and what their needs are and where we're at with them. And I get to, like they come in and I do a little ceremony in their room. I smudge the rooms. Even the ones that are not natives, they're coming to me now, and they feel that energy that we're all giving them. And so that's what I try to do for them, to make them feel comfortable. Just we've had a lot of successes. Just people had a client, got a full denture, full medical health wise. That wouldn't have happened if this was going on, because he had a place to put his head down to sleep, to rest, and a lot of that's been happening slowly. We want it to happen faster, I think, but that's not the case. It's everybody has a journey, and everybody has they have to meet us halfway too, and that's what we're trying to teach them, and some are not reluctant to go there yet, but that's where we all kind of come together and seek what kind of right direction we need to go, manifest manifest. I'm always guided by somebody like that, you know. Um, so we've been teach, I pray before I go to work, and there's always something going on. You need to be ready. You need to be, a clear mind, strong minded person, to come in, because anything can happen with these residences, and I'm implementing that with some of the clients that are with us. They haven't done this because they're so, lived in certain predicaments that they forgot a lot of that. So gradually, I think we're bringing in people to get their mind at ease and to be able to that they can move forward from here. All they needed was a bed to sleep in, to sleep. All they needed was food. All they needed was care. And to be able to do that as a group with these guys is, I think it's an awesome thing that we're doing. I think maybe some people don't see faster results, but I think it's a lot of work that, the first year, I think is going to teach a lot of you guys on how to implement a lot of the things that we made mistakes on, or that you guys can create a better version of your place, so I like to I'm always open to constructive criticism. I'm not the, best person, so like having guidance from anybody that works there, coming in and, creating this space, so that's my whole objective, so, I mean, I'll be here. If you guys have any questions outside of this, Thank you.
So my role is working with both of these teams. I work at SEPA, and so I get the pleasure to work with the Heartwood Commons team and the Joyce team. And so there's lots of folks also part of these teams who aren't here today. And it is they're quite kind of these functioning machines that have taken a bit of time to kind of get there. But I think for me, thinking of this first year, it's this theme of trying something, adjusting, trying again, go back, readjusting, and trying again. So it's required all of us to have patience, to have persistence, to be creative, and to always be centering ourselves in what we're trying to do in PSH services, which we're trying to get folks housing and help them keep their housing. Folks that are coming in with lots of bags that they're carrying, trauma and isolation and, different experiences that they've had in their life. So folks are bringing all of that in. And the teams that do the support, the thing I've learned is that, and I've said this again and again, is this process that we're on together. So there's not just one answer and there's not just one way to do it. And what we've had to do in these collaborations is really hold space for the magic of what's happening in a multi-organizational partnership, because folks are bringing in different ideas, different expertise, different experiences, different priorities, different philosophies that are all really important. And so what happens in a room is we have to kind of bring all of those thoughts together to kind of figure out how are we going to, from 5 different organizations or from 3 different organizations, come together and do something that helps to create a feeling of safety, helps to create a feeling of welcome, helps to create a feeling of home for those folks who are coming and moving in from the streets. I think one of the other pieces is that people talked a little bit about slowing down and not expecting that we're going to kind of get to that answer or get to that perfect solution, really needing to commit to each other. And the other piece is being open to learning new things. There's a lot of planning that happens going into a project. We think about all the pieces we've got to think about, and how is this going to look, and what's going to fund this, and how is this process going to look, and how are residents going to come into the building, all of those pieces. But there's things that come up as we kind of get implementing it, and those things change. Some of those things change. The residents' interests are different than what we kind of thought, or their needs might be different. And there's changes to the system processes or stuff going on in the community outside of these buildings that might be impacting, and we have to respond to that. So we do our best planning ahead of time, but then it all centers in kind of this commitment to coming back together to try stuff and retry it again in a different way. Some of the specific, like a couple of examples of things that we learned, which it sounds weird to say because we're working with folks with very low incomes, but food insecurity was something that I don't think we fully understood and planned for prior to going into these projects and seeing the impact of folks moving from homelessness, maybe in different communities than they were used to, or without kind of access to those other resources that they had. Folks were hungry, and we saw that impacting how people were interacting with each other in the common spaces, how neighbors were interacting with each other, how when people are hungry, they're not operating at their best. And so it became a thing that had to really be addressed. And it's not a typical service oftentimes in a lot of the different service organizations that we provide. We also know it's a hard thing to get funded. But the teams, both teams kind of came together and identified how within, out in Aloha, at Heartwood Commons, which is not set in a city center, and the Joyce, what are the options for us to help increase access to food? So different food distribution activities were set up, as well as meals. So at Heartwood Commons, our wonderful resident service coordinator does a weekly meal for the residents. It's an opportunity for service and care to be offered, but also to help provide kind of, at least we know folks are getting this. We've had to kind of figure out some different ways to help address it, but that's just one of the things I think thinking about. You can do all your planning, but then you have to kind of be open to coming back to readjust and relook at, okay, we didn't think about this piece, or we thought it was this thing and now it's actually this other thing.
Thanks so much, guys. Super thorough. If you're a funder or a policy person and you ever get asked for flexible, if someone's asking you for flexible dollars, this is why. We don't know, right? And you guys are like making it work. You need those flexible funds to do what you said, which is like, okay, cool. Everyone in our building, hangry, right? It's not gonna work. Cool, thank you. Okay, so we are doing pretty good. You guys are really thorough. Which is awesome. I don't mean that, no shade. You guys are really thorough. And I believe you kind of have talked a lot about coordination and communication, but I want to throw it out there one more time. If there's anything additional you want to add about learning each other, right? Like if you're a service provider, how did I learn to work with property manager, et cetera. So yeah, I'll pass it one more time. Let's keep it a little bit brief on coordination and communication.
Coordination and communication is a huge part of PSH, and what we do at Heartwood Commons is a weekly meeting with manager, property manager, and then the supervisor for Sequoia Mental Health and SEPA, and then the supervisor for our property management company. And I think that is a really good way to like all be in the loop about incidents and things like that. And then the county used to be included in those, but now I just meet weekly with the county more for like leasing updates and things like that, and then occasional meetings. So I just think those meetings are really important. But the meetings that are most important to me are the ones that aren't formal meetings. It's the touch base we pretty much do as service providers every morning when we come in. We all sit in our very small shared office and in a circle and really just talk about the residents, talk about everything that's happened, talk about all the things that are going to be happening throughout the day and what person can provide what service and what need for each resident to be filled. And I just think that that is vital for keeping the communication so that we're all on the same page, and that so that we're really all working towards the goal of providing for residents and getting their needs met, and no matter like what that entails. So I think that the non-formal meetings are the most important part of the communication.
When focusing on the coordination and communication within our Heartwood Commons program is understanding everyone's role and kind of building a puzzle from there. Heartwood itself had to have about 3 to 4 separate independent meetings of having to go over our job responsibilities and what our job was technically entailing, because sometimes there was an overlap or there was a miscommunication on a service provider's role or property management. So having those meetings was very beneficial for us, but it happened a little bit too much more than I would have liked it to. But I think being able to understand the role for property management in my role as clinical case manager, or even a housing case manager or a leads or resident coordinator, it's very important because it provides the assessment of when a client does bring a need to you, and you can have that proper direction of who's going to be taking on that responsibility for helping the client. One thing that I'd want to say that I think is working really well at Heartwood is understanding that property management and the service providers are sharing the same goal, but have different abilities to be able to maintain that housing goal. So when it comes to disagreements or even a application denial, we need to stand on a ground that is a productive process when trying to navigate through those moments where we technically don't overlap, and seeing how are we prioritizing housing services, but more importantly, permanent supportive housing or housing retention. Those conversations that we have to have actually, in my opinion, I think kind of enhances our understanding about how we're going to be handling situations in the future, how we're going to be handling the situations based off of our position, but more importantly, how we can find that common goal that works for both the service providers and property management.
Yeah, I mean, ditto to everything that's already been said. I really like where other people have been going with this. I particularly like what you had mentioned, Catherine, about the regular recurring meetings that we had kind of at the outset, and that has really continued. We have weekly meetings at the Joyce that involve everybody that's involved with the service provision at the site, like those that are on site, as well as myself and other director level people that are not on site super regularly. And one of the things that we've done is that every other week that also includes property management. So it's not just the service providers getting together, it's also periodically with property management. In addition to that, there's weekly meetings that happen for the on-site service provider team, and then just the constant continual collaboration and communication coordination that's going on. I don't think there's ever been a time that I've walked into the Joyce and case managers aren't meeting with somebody or meeting with each other to kind of collaborate on how to support folks. And so that's a really awesome thing that we see on a continual basis. And that's vitally important to the success of each individual tenant, each individual household, and also the project as a whole. I think that when you're and I really see no reason for that to not continue. So I hope and believe that it will continue, and I think it's necessary to continue. I think also communicating with your outside partners that are involved with projects is really important. So we have like at least monthly meetings with Joss or with the Joint Office of Homeless Services, who kind of funds the program and is helping to refer people to our program. And so that's a really important piece for not only the ongoing like lease up needs when people transition out of the program and need to transition new people in, but also as another kind of supportive entity that helps us at the Joyce. So
What he said. um, well, I think working with the Pinehurst, there's been a lot of turnover. Like there is going to be kind of that turnover. And how are the clients impacted by that? Yeah, property management. Yeah. And so how are the clients impacted? And it kind of falls down to case management and how we communicate with each other, and then it flows into the clients. So that way we're the ones that are kind of holding up everything else, so that we're ready if something does come up. Why isn't there no front desk person, or so we kind of switch roles as we're going along, to be able to accommodate for the clients. So there are going to be those situations, and it's just a matter of how I kind of see it, like how are the clients viewing us? How are we implementing certain things? How do we act with each other as employees? And I think that's important. And when there's right communication and meetings that we usually have, and we're all on the same page. That way clients are not scattered all over the place. This is going on. So we try to stay in front of that. And that's what I kind of like about, the meetings that we have with all of us.
So I will just add that I think the biggest part of PSH is it's not just like bringing services into a building. It is kind of some of the synergy that happens in the group, and having that commitment to come back together has been really important, because sometimes this work is hard, and the day to day for the staff who are, working in the buildings, that's amplified. And there's always things coming up. There's a tendency or a push almost to be kind of reactive to each thing coming up. But I think centering back in this commitment to engaging with each other, even when it's hard, even when we know we're not necessarily going to come out of that meeting with an answer, or a decision that's going to kind of shift everything around, but it gives us that the process is kind of the work. And I think this, one of the pieces we haven't spoke a ton to, but is that services work alongside property management and work really closely. Property management is part of the permanent supportive housing team. And we have to continue to center what our goal is helping people get and keep housing, and creating safe and stable communities for people. Because there is some inherent rub between what the role of services staff are and what the role of property management is. And so, but by kind of continuing to center that goal that we're shared, we can navigate through that. And there's real like concrete ways to do that. So at the Joyce, we worked very closely with property management and SEPA's asset manager to create a behavioral lease violation, a procedure to kind of addressing behavioral lease violations that was very different than how you would see in a typical apartment building, or even in a permanent supportive housing building, unless there was time to do this extra work and think, really, how are we going to look at services differently in this building, because they have to operate differently? How are we going to look at property management roles and procedures in this building, because it has to operate differently for permanent supportive housing to be successful? We all kind of grow and adapt and change a little bit in there. And so I think that that procedure has been really helpful of creating some transparency and opportunities for conversation. And really, I think, solidifying some of that partnership between services and property management, as we're seeing kind of give and take on both sides and kind of figuring out where to compromise.
Thanks so much, guys. All right. So last topic, and then we'll open up to the crowd. Again, we'll keep this one brief. You guys have really addressed it a lot, but again, supportive housing, right? We really talk about tenant choice, tenant leading, right? It's housing plus voluntary services. So we really have to work with, how that person wants to work. So I'm wondering, in your first year, in all your experience, how are you letting tenants lead? And maybe, we could do maybe one from each building, or, one collective comment instead of the whole crew, so we could open up to the crowd. So I don't know if you guys want to talk amongst yourselves about.
Sure.
Yeah. So in regards to tenant-led interaction, I do think that one of the things that I didn't really realize was going to be an issue was the lack of engagement of when it comes to the clients. We're right, maybe same floor, second floor, third floor. Our service provider office is right there, and sometimes our clients just don't come to us. I have the belief that the service provider is supposed to be solely responsible for doing the engagements, but at the same time, as an independent living facility, there needs to be kind of like this balance of responsibility and accountability for the client, but at the same time, the provider still making it a priority of making it an importance with the engagements. So I'd want to say is, with making it tenant led, there you need to get kind of creative about how you want to kind of build that trust with the client, because what we were previously stating is that clients are still currently on survival mode. They don't really want to trust anyone. They barely even trust the fact that they're going to be keeping their housing, let alone are they going to want to build another relationship that they may leave, that they might have to leave from. So I'd want to say that the service providers, you really want to make sure that you're maintaining that engagement, even if the client is not coming up to you, because the client may not know the amount of services that we can offer. They don't even know what they can possibly need help with. So when you're meeting with your clients, it's letting them know, hey, we provide this, we offer this, hey, asking them how their day is and finding out if there's a problem from within there and being able to provide a solution from that. So I'd want to say staying committed to providing client-centered services, because once you start putting in your own expectation for the client, you kind of experience this um, fatigue that kind of happens, this compassion fatigue when you're trying to set the expectation for your client instead of keeping it client-centered. When you are making the client's needs first, you go at their pace and understanding that you build your trust through there, and you build their trust by staying committed, by being present, and staying a continuous solution for that client.
Tenant-led engagement is so incredibly important. Us as service providers, we typically, especially for newer projects, we tend to kind of start off like leading that, development of community, which again, that's really the most important part of the success of any PSH project is there being a community, but that needs to really be driven by the actual members of the community. We're there for 8, well, maybe sometimes 10 or 12 hours a day, but they don't leave. That's their home. That's their community there. And so our efforts to create, groups and individual activities and things of that nature need to adapt with the needs of the residents as we get to know them. And that's been a really important thing at the Joyce that we've seen a lot of challenges with and a lot of successes. I mean, we may come in and think that a cooking group or a bingo group or a karaoke group might be cool things for people to do and that everybody will be really excited to participate in. But that might not actually be the case. And they might be more interested in a trauma-informed Dungeons and Dragons group, which is something that the resident service coordinator at the Joyce is doing, and that's getting a lot of awesome engagement in. And so you need to be creative and you need to be adaptable, you need to be flexible, and you need to, again, really try to encourage and foster the creation of that community within the program. And that really needs to be driven by the tenants, by the residents of the program. Easier said than done. And, a lot of things we've tried and haven't worked, but it's just about continuing to create those opportunities. Sometimes I was told once that sometimes the 51st time you try something that it's actually successful and you actually get a response to. And I really firmly believe that you just need to continue to provide those opportunities for people and give them the chance to engage and create something for themselves in their own community.
Awesome. Okay, thank you guys so much. Yeah, Melissa, Martin, Catherine, Robert, Patrick, awesome job. So that is our portion, and then we have a few minutes left for questions. So please let us know. I see some hands. Okay. Question for the audio: do they just speak, or is there a mic for them? This one. Okay. Yep. I'll be the runner. Okay, I saw this hand in the back, so I'm gonna.
You mentioned that you work with coordinated entry, but I hadn't heard that spoken about yet. How do you work with that with your community action agencies, and what does that entail?
Okay, so everyone gets to watch me run. Yep.
Yeah, so we actually have 2 different coordinated entry systems represented here. So Heartwood Commons works with Community Connect in Washington County very closely with that system, and referrals come through. We also have an opportunity for some internal referrals, which is a nice aspect of that coordinated entry system, is that there's some allowance for if we have people in our process. So, I mean, referrals come through that system and the staff engage with them, or we connect with another provider in the system who's working with them. Similarly, at the Joyce side, all referrals for housing come through the coordinated entry system, coordinated access in Multnomah County. And so the staff work closely and collaborate and have regularly scheduled meetings with the coordinated entry systems to talk about who's on the list, who's coming up next. Some of our partners have some other eligibility requirements. So there's different work that they have to do to determine if folks are eligible before even starting. So there's a lot of pre-work that happens in both of these programs with referrals coming through coordinated entry, including trying to find and locate the person who is experiencing homelessness, and then build enough of a relationship to keep them engaged and hold on to hope that housing is gonna come, because sometimes it takes I mean, moving fast, it can take 2 weeks. We've seen that happen. We've also seen it take 3 months to kind of move through a process. So, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question.
Thanks. I do not know whose arms are first, but I'm just gonna go to the back and then you next, okay?
What is one thing that you, pardon me, wish that you would have done in the planning stage to make lease up and turnover end up going faster and smoother?
One thing that comes to mind for me and for Cascada, I wish we hadn't had the challenges that we had with hiring our case manager. I think that's an across the mental health system, in particular, healthcare systems in general. Like hiring is a big thing, retaining staff is a big challenge. That would have been something that would have made it a little bit smoother. Our ability to do some of that pre-work before people are moving in, helping coordinate access and with the Joint Office of Homeless Services that's sending our referrals. And so that would have been something that would have been helpful for me personally. I think that another important aspect of permanent supportive housing is also developing relationships with the immediate community around programs. And I think that that's one area where we could have done a little bit more, or maybe approached it a little bit differently from my perspective. But I think we also did a lot of work in that area. It's just sometimes our efforts aren't always successful. And so putting intentional and proactive efforts towards getting connected with the neighbors, having good solid relationships with them so that when challenges come up, you're better able to respond to that and address those concerns. That's another thing that comes to mind for me.
Yeah, I think just the neighboring, we're pretty much downtown, so there's a lot of stores and restaurants and all that. And maybe they did to inform them about what's going on downtown area, and that way the people are informed, the stores are informed, and because this is a stigma about being homeless and being on drugs and stuff like that. So I think that might be something that should could be done for a lot more before starting something like that.
I would just say that if you're planning a program like this, I think it would be good to start with a role similar to mine, which is a lead coordinator. Because when I first came in, the housing case managers were expected to do all of the leasing up themselves, along with everything else they had to do. So having me come in and kind of be the designated person to make sure all the applications are in, the appeals are in, and work with the county really closely to get that stuff done has been really helpful to free up the housing case managers to do what they need to do, which is work directly with the clients, getting them set up, getting their furniture, getting food in their pantry, things like that. So a role that can really focus on the lease up process would be really helpful from the beginning.
And something I want to add real fast too is in the beginning stages, I would say that what would be beneficial is creating a workflow. So kind of understanding about what the process is gonna look like from doing the application process to the enrollment and kind of being able to write out a step-by-step process. I that happened for us. I think I was already working in my position 10 months in until we finally actually had a meeting and we were able to put it down in a list of what was needing to be done, who was going to be taking on the responsibilities of how we were going to have a better flow. I do think that when you're starting up a program, it's not a problem to kind of take the structure or the skeleton of another program and just use it as kind of a basis. Sorry about that. And using it as a basis because when you're trying to do a free for all, sometimes not having anything there can kind of be really anxiety inducing and you don't have a sense of direction, which kind of causes this executive dysfunction. So being able to kind of just pull from another program and say, hey, let's kind of start off with this to at least create a proper flow, I do think is very important when starting a program.
Thank you. Right back here, and then maybe if we have time for one more. Thank you guys for having so many questions.
Hey, Hi, I wanted to say thanks for naming food insecurity as a need because I run a food security nonprofit that serves downtown Portland. And one of the things that I've seen is intense isolation since the pandemic. And a lot of what you've talked about is how you support individual residents. And I'm curious what efforts you make to create a sense of community and connect residents with one another. And two-parter, sorry. But I also see the disparities between supported housing and just subsidized housing and really fundamentally believe that supportive housing is essential to addressing Portland's housing crisis. What ways do you see that we could champion that and make it just center in the discussions about solving our housing crisis?
So I'll talk a little bit about the first part. For, food insecurity is a massively huge challenge that we face day to day. And so, uh, the resident service coordinator at the Joyce really led a lot of those efforts. Getting connected with local, food banks to, arrange like delivery and pickup opportunities for everybody, not necessarily for specific individuals, but also doing like targeted work individually on the case management level to get people connected with individuals that can help address their individual food insecurity. We were also able to other service providers to connect with other organizations that we had partnered with at other projects to try and bring other resources in. But that's an ongoing thing because, I just learned the other day that one of the food resources we had found is no longer operating anymore. And so like, hey, we need to try and find a different resource for the folks that are living there. Also letting them giving them the opportunity to go and find that stuff themselves. So, hey, like, I'm not just going to give you a box, but hey, this is where you can go to get that yourself. We want to do more with people as opposed to doing for people. We want to promote independence and autonomy as much as we can while also ensuring that their basic needs are being met, which again, easier said than done, like a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here. But those are some of the ways that we've approached that more on an individual basis and as a community as a whole at the Joyce anyways.
So both of these buildings have a resident service coordinator, which is great because that person doesn't have like a primary caseload. And the other on-site case managers do kind of have like, these are the folks I'm primarily responsible for. But as we heard from Patrick and from Martin, that means, they're serving really everyone depending on kind of the need and flexing with each other. But our resident service coordinators are really focused on kind of helping to build community through different things. So offering various classes, groups, activities. Some of them are fun things like bingo. And some of them are, things that are really driven from resident requests, like an art group. We have a lot of artists that live in these spaces, some amazing work that comes out of these spaces. And so those groups have given an opportunity for residents to build relationship with each other, and get to see each other's strengths and get to have fun together as opposed to only kind of focusing. A lot of times we have things that's focused like, what's the negative part that we need to fix? But really a capacity building approach. And so, both of these sites have a variety of those group activities that they do. Heartwood Commons has recently started an AA group on site, and that was driven from resident request of having an opportunity for a space to talk about sobriety and kind of people's struggles. And so it's dependent on kind of what that community is interested in. And it might mean that there's a lot of different pieces, but I will say that at both of these properties, voluntary service participation is voluntary, but we see really high percentage of participation in these group activities. I ran the numbers yesterday, and I think it was like 91% at the Joyce had engaged in some community event or activity together. And Heartwood Commons, it was similar. It was like 88% had engaged in a community activity on site since the first year of opening, which is huge. That's not what we see in our more traditional affordable housing. And so we're really seeing people coming together, building community, and wanting that.
Did you say 90%? Hey, nice job. That's awesome. This may be our last, but we'll see.
It's not a question, it's a quick plug for a later session that's being put on by ORMAP program managers. It's at 1:45, and it's a residents journey mapping. So to your point about map out that process, it's a way of looking at the process from an emotional and functional format to really dig in deep and do exactly what you suggested we do. So that's at 1:45. It's in the Ross Island room.
Cool, thanks. Okay.
Yeah, this is around processes and policies. Since you guys have been open for about a year plus, how dialed in are you guys with your guys' policies and processes, and how often are you guys making improvements to said processes?
A hard one.
At the Heartwood Commons, we're still working on our policies, it's because they're ever changing. So I just have a binder and every week something will come up and I'll be like, oh, we need to add this to the policy, or we'll do something just on the fly with a resident. And then kind of the next day be like, maybe we shouldn't have done that way. So let's get a policy for next time that happens, because a lot of it is just like working on our toes and figuring things out as it happens. And so I think it's really important to have policies and procedures and just have it be an ongoing kind of literature that you're adding to, like, we have all the basics, things like fire procedures, all that, but some of the things that are in there, you don't even think about till you're literally in the work and doing it. And I think that that's just kind of an important approach.
Yeah, so a great deal of work was done on, policies, procedures, processes before the project opened, and even more work has been done since then. It's not like a crock pot, it's not set and forget it, right? You need to be continually working on and evaluating like policies and procedures that you've set up and established and making revisions to those as necessary. The guest policy is one that really, is at the forefront of my mind. We've had a lot of challenges with people's guests, and we want to promote people having visitors whenever they want. That's what we're able to do in our homes and our apartments and places that we're living, right? So why can't residents at supportive housing programs do the same sort of thing? And when there's guests that are, violating violating the rules and doing things that are unsafe or inappropriate, then we need to have a system so that we can address that. And that policy and procedure, that process for how we do that has grown and changed pretty significantly from before we opened to when we first opened, and then 6 months down the road. And so I think it's vitally important that we have a system by which we can make changes and edits to our policy and procedures on a continual basis. Nothing can be really set in stone. It needs to be flexible, adaptable as to all aspects of working in a supportive housing setting.
Thank you guys so much. So I know Patrick wanted to close us out, so I will close us out and then you will close us out properly. Do you want to still? Yeah, cool. Okay. So thank you guys. Thank you. Hey. That's awesome. Yeah, so lovely. Obviously, right? Supportive housing, if you're into creativity, innovation, flexibility, big hearts, it's for you. So come back, talk to these guys. Thank you for being here. Yeah, thank you guys so much. Feel free to reach out. My name, Ray Trotta, in the pamphlet, ray.trotta@csh.org. If you have any questions, let us know. I can always route you back to these folks. And yeah, have a great time. Thank you. And Patrick, thank you so much. Super beautiful.